they get more people, because if I can get therapy for $60 an hour, now I like getting paid better than $60 an hour, but I've done therapy for $1 an hour because I feel it's important that they give to me too.
You don't think that devalues the profession and violates the boundary that we set that says, hey, it's worth this much, and if you can't afford it, make do. You know, I mean, because there are community organizations like ours that do offer reduced rate when you see a student, for example. And then there's Medicaid, right? And then there's people who just don't want to be bothered with billing Medicaid. And there's people who don't want to be bothered with billing insurance. And that to me is professionally insulting, because if we're in here truly to help people, we need to make the sacrifice of going to the extent that we enroll ourselves in insurance and commercial billing, so that we can see those.
A lot of people who don't qualify for Medicaid and also don't have insurance.
Sure, there's the gaps, but then again, you know, what's my effort? My effort is see a grad student for a floor of $5 and a ceiling of $30.
Okay.
There's no reason that, and students galore, by the way, seeking placement, especially now with the burgeoning online academic institutional path, right? So there's tons and tons of students that we can't host at Zephyr, Great Basin, True North. These are some agencies in town that host grad students. There's no reason that the private practitioner renting out the office for $800 a month, who isn't there 7 days a week, can't do the same thing. There's no reason they can't do that. But they
absolutely. And they don't. I also think that I've always felt that treatment was more important than money.
Yeah, but where do you draw the line? It raises a debate about where the line gets drawn. Because if you do it for one person, then the next person catches wind of it. They go, well, I don't want to pay $100. I want to pay $1. So where do you draw the line? Or, you know, I don't want to be in a position of individually requiring income statements from people, or, you know,
and I never have. I've always done this is my rate. Now we're going to negotiate with each other to figure out what you can afford and what you think I'm worth. I have more than once sat with somebody and said, okay, $100 an hour is what I normally charge.
Mm-hmm.
I know you can't afford that. I want you to talk to each other and then come back to me, and we'll negotiate the cost. They've come back and they said, we want to pay the $100. And I say, you can't afford to do that. That becomes a hardship. You won't come to therapy as often as you need to come to therapy because you can't afford it.
So isn't that stepping on their autonomy, though? If they choose to do what they, you know, at their rate, at their pace, isn't that like asking the question about like inserting yourself, you know, as the expert into their life, saying, I know better than you about your life?
No, I don't think so. It's me saying, I think you've asked me as the professional what I think is appropriate for your level of treatment. Right?
Okay.
I'm telling you what I think is appropriate.
Right.
You're telling me that you can come up with $400 a month to come in weekly.
Mm-hmm.
And yet one of the things we talk about routinely in therapy is money. I know you can't come up with $400 a month to do that. I don't want therapy to be a burden.
But if it's important enough to them that they carve out wherever they carve to make it work.
Well, and if I say to them, I really appreciate that you think I'm worth that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we need to start somewhere else. Can we agree that this is worth $25 a session to you? And when you guys feel like you're getting enough from it and you want to give me a raise, we'll talk about that.
I wonder why we're the only profession that does that. Because I know you're not the only one who does.
No, I'm not the only one who does. And I also think we're not the only profession who does do it.
I don't know that that's accomplishable in dentistry or pediatrics or in automotive dentistry, even.
Maybe not so much. Automotive, maybe not so much. Until doctors stopped having relationships with their clients, with their patients, they would be taking chickens and, right?
Maybe 100 years ago. But then you're talking barter, and barter has a value too, but the value is not negotiable.
But and I think that for me, some of the self-satisfaction of knowing that my client is getting better is worth something too.
Totally. It's a tough balance, and I'm glad we're talking about this, because if people are listening, it's like Jake's arguing with Gail. No, we're not. What we're trying to do is flesh out that if you're a client consumer of the service, people are out there who will do negotiated fees. You don't. The term sliding scale gets talked about a lot, and that's a very unique term that's only applicable to federally funded agencies. Sliding scale has a unique term, but it's used broadly. But the point is, fees aren't fixed, right?
For a sliding scale, it means that this is where the scale starts. This is the top of the scale, and we slide it based on your income.
Right.
That means
and there's
that
usually paperwork.
You have to expose all of your financial goods and bads to me, so I can decide how much you should pay me.
Right. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about.
I don't like that. I feel like it's too invasive, which is why I want to do a negotiated fee. I feel like it's the first. If we're in that situation, I feel like it's the first task of me and the client. It's one of the ways we build rapport. Mm-hmm. By being honest that this is going to cost some money.
Yeah.
That money is a finite resource in most of our lives. If it's not a finite resource, we don't need to negotiate. This is how much I charge. This is how much you pay me.
So for the clinicians who listen, because we do have clinicians who listen to this too, how is it not inconsistent to negotiate fees with some people and not others? Or do you negotiate with everybody? And then
I start that off as part of my shtick at the very beginning of every session. Not every session, but every relationship. We need to talk about money, because you have to talk about money, right?
I don't know, because no other profession does this. And we're talking today, not 1930. Doctors with home visits that don't happen anymore either. So today, they say, here's our rate. If you can't afford it, wait and save up, or don't come in. Because the auto mechanic isn't interested in, man, I really believe you need your car to be working so you can get to work, so I won't charge you what I normally charge you. Because of what that begets is everybody wants to negotiate that now. And it could potentially devalue the profession. So my question is, how does that not send a message of devaluing the service?
So I find that with people that I have an excellent relationship with, such as my auto mechanic, I think I get a better deal from him than people who don't have an excellent relationship with him.
But where does that line get drawn?
I am assuming he's drawing the line.
Right. But where do we draw the line? Because it can't be by feel. That would be discriminatory. Or at least it opens up the gate for discrimination.
Okay, so I don't think I'm perfect.
Me either.
I know you're surprised. And I think that for me to say there is some mythical spot in my life where I'm never discriminatory is real. I think that I am inadvertently discriminatory at times. I try not to be. I do my best. And if nothing else, what I really work for is being respectful. If I can't, because discriminatory is such a negative word.
Huge, yeah.
It's a hugely negative word. And it's a hugely negative behavior. So if I look at each one of my clients with a view of being as kind and respectful as I can be, then that's how I'm drawing the discriminatory line.
Right. They're all being treated the same and given the same opportunities.
Right.
Right.
And so I will give, like my children, I will give clients a second or third chance. I actually have had a client fire me 3 times and then come back and beg to come back. I can't afford to go to this person and come back. The third time after she fired me, she called me back and said, I can't find anybody else I can see. You're the only one who will see me. And I said, Candy, I think I really need to just acknowledge that you have fired me now 2 or 3 times. I think that you're right. I should not be the person you're seeing because it's clearly not working for you. You keep firing me. And I'm going to not let you back down from that. For several reasons. Therapeutically, she needed to realize that she couldn't keep firing people and just then come back in and take over. That was a big one. I also think that it's really important that you recognize what you've got. And if you can't do it after 2 times, you're not going to get it. Until I hold a big boundary. Sometimes what you as a therapist have to do is hold the big ugly, right? I hate that big ugly boundary. That's what I have to do as a parent too. Damn.
I guess that's why we have policies, right? So if policies are in place, nothing's scaled or on a gradient of, big ugly or small and insignificant. It's just there. We don't have to feel one way or the other about it. It's like, yeah, sucks. You missed your appointment 3 times in a row. You lose your chance on the schedule, or whatever it is.
Which are great. Those are great. And sometimes you have somebody who can't make it because they are so impacted that they can't even keep track of the day. Do you say then they can never come back because they don't have that?
No, what we say is 90 days. You got to wait 90 days. If you're so discombobulated that you can't keep your appointments, you're inherently interfering with somebody else's ability to take that appointment slot, who will be consistent and will do the work. So we say,
who may be consistent.
Yeah. Well, presumably, right? But we've done this long enough now that we can have some relative predictability on it. So we say, wait 90 days. A lot can change in 3 months. But essentially what we're saying is, get your life together and make this a priority because other people are. And it's disrespectful to the clinician who's, eager to help you and could help someone else just to have an empty slot in their calendar at the last minute. And people get that. They totally do. When it's explained to them when they're, madder than a wet hen on the phone and, dropping F-bombs and it's like, hey, listen, here's from our perspective. And they go, I totally get it. I totally get it. You're right. Okay. And we go, come back in 3 months. Otherwise, you're welcome to go try any other place in town, too. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it's a bad fit. Maybe it's timing matters, too, right?
Well, and one of the things that Alan does, Alan Ritchie, Alan, whom I adore.
Yeah.
One of the things he does in therapy is that he meets with the family the first time, and then he says, your job tonight is to go home and figure out whether or not you want to see me anymore. It's okay if you don't.
Yep. We don't compel people just to sign up on the calendar.
Right. And I expect a call from you if you want to see me. If you don't want to see me, that's okay. I won't take that personally. But he says, and I get this, this makes so much sense to me. So much of therapy is chemistry. And even if our therapeutic relationship isn't successful, maybe that's what they need to have a more successful relationship with someone else.
Right. I also think that the counterbalance to that is that it's our job to make the environment as warm and welcoming and non-judgmental as possible so that we remove all roadblocks and excuses. Because there are people who play musical therapists too, just so they can talk about how they tried therapy and it didn't work.
Absolutely. And maybe that's what they needed. I mean, at the cabinet, we used to find that people would get better while they were on the waiting list.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. They do. Yeah. Or they lose faith. They lose faith and give up. Which we don't really
knows? But I choose to believe they get better. And I think they get better because they took some action.
Right. Yeah. They didn't leave it up to the external person, us, to fix them. They realized that stuff was bad enough as it was, and they decided to change, which absolutely can happen.